Good to see everybody. And we're going to go ahead and get started because we have our special spotlight speakers today. They are with AirMap, and they're going to tell us all about how to use the software program and going through the whole Lance authorization. So we have Sarah Harris and Marshall Jen. I know his says Sarah Harris. So today we have two Sarahs, as we did have two Vic Mosses last week.
That's funny. I'm the real Sarah Harris, but the star of the show here, everyone, is my colleague Marshall Jen, who runs AirMap's customer success.
Hey Kim, how you doing?
Awesome.
Nice seeing you again.
Thank you.
Yeah, happy New Year.
Thanks.
All right, so I've made you both available, so feel free to share your screen, walk through anything that you would like, and we'll go ahead and get things rolling.
That sounds great. I'll turn it over to Marshall, who's going to take us through how to use AirMap for drones. That's our product for drone operators. It's a way to fly safely, get access to flying controlled airspace, know the rules and regulations of where you're flying. And Marshall will give us his most expert deep dive on that. So without any further ado, Marshall.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. Hey everybody, thanks for having me. I'm Marshall, not Sarah, listed under there. So I'm just going to take about 15 minutes to walk through the drone operator application, just so we can kind of get everybody started. It's the end of the Christmas season, so we normally see a spike in drone ownership around that time. And then what happens is everybody gets a drone, either for recreational or commercial use. And then the next question is, can I fly safely, and how do I fly safely? What are the different technologies out there to enable me as the drone operator to fly safely? So I'm going to walk through how to do that. Now, just to give some background about myself, I've been working in the drone space for about 5 years now. I worked at DJI as an enterprise consultant, helping different commercial enterprises integrating drone technologies. And then I came over to AirMap because I understood how important the regulatory technology side of things is going to be if we as drone operators are going to start using these technologies in the air for commercial use or even recreational use. And that's really been the focus of AirMap for the past 5 years now. I've been with them for about 4 years in February. Now, the tool that I'm going to go ahead and show you, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and without further ado, kind of get to the good stuff here. All right, and sorry, 1 second, should see it. Okay, if you don't see it, please let me know, but you should see the web application here with different colors. Now, this is available for iOS as well as Android. That's important because sometimes drone operators will use mobile applications to essentially apply for Lance authorization on the ground. Just to kind of overview why we need this essentially. So just to go over the different colors and airspaces that you're seeing here. So the scenario is, you receive your drone, you're either planning a flight ahead of time, or you're planning a flight, you're planning to apply for a flight at the moment to get into the air. Well, you'll open up your application, and then you're going to go to your specific location. Where I am right now is on the West Coast, and you're going to see these different colors. Now, we get a lot of questions because it can be fairly intimidating, but this is no different than a traditional aviation chart, because we as drone operators kind of have to behave in ways that we are guests in the airspace, right? So we need to find ways to work with different traditional manned traffic and airplanes and helicopters in the air, and this helps us do that. So in here, the different colors that we can see, we can identify whether it's going to be a controlled airspace, or if it's going to be a restricted airspace, or if it's going to be class Gulf uncontrolled airspace. So what you see here, I'll go through the colors really quickly. These are different types of airspaces. So you have Bravo, you have Charlie, you have Delta, and you have Echo, right? And that's okay. It doesn't necessarily mean you can't fly in these areas. You certainly can, but you'll need to go through an authorization process, which I'm going to show you. Just going through a few more of the different colors. And what I'm going to do is I will share this key with everybody. But essentially, blue and purple are different controlled airspaces in which you can apply for land authorization if the facility is participating. Red generally means, these are, you cannot fly here. The reason for that is either it's a national park or it's a no-fly zone. So there's a permanent temporary no-fly zone over Disneyland, over Washington, D.C. So you'll see that kind of dispersed in the map. And those are pretty much no-fly zones that you will need special permission from the authority, whether that's the national park or specifically Disneyland, right? And then you'll see a few different colors like green. Now, green is pretty self-explanatory. You can fly here. These are recreational AMA fields. So it's generally okay to fly there. And if you zoom in, we get a lot of questions about this, so I want to kind of clarify this here. If you see these kind of hot, really bright orange zones, these are first responder emergency zones. So generally you want to stay away from those areas, okay? Now, I'm going to answer one more question about colors specifically, because we get a lot of questions about this. So when this is enabled, we have a lot of confusion about this, because what does this mean? This essentially covers the whole map. This is just for airspace awareness. This essentially just gives you a visual representation of where the airports are, where the heliports are, where the hospitals are, where the prisons are, where the schools are, and where the power plants are. It doesn't necessarily mean you can't fly there. This is for airspace awareness for the drone operator. If you ever find yourself with this kind of displayed across the map, just go ahead and disable that, and it kind of clears everything up a little bit more. And anything that's not outside, so everything that is kind of within, not really controlled by any sort of airspace, that's considered class Gulf airspace. And it's generally okay to fly in these areas without approval because they're not going to be in a controlled airspace. We do have a key for this on our website, and I will post this after the demonstration, and just kind of hold on to it. That way, you know what the airspace color means, and it reduces some of the confusion in the map. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and get to some of the juicier parts here. So now the scenario is you understand the airspace, you've already kind of looked at it. Well, now you need to make sure that you're flying under the appropriate mission type. Are you flying recreationally? Are you flying commercially? And the map is going to react based on that mission type. You can always review into the rules of that mission type. So for example, part 107 for commercial operations, no flying at night, no flying over people, ensure that you're flying under 400 feet altitude and things like that. So that's kind of the second step. Make sure that you're going to be submitting your flight plan under the correct rule, okay? Now, the scenario is you've selected the mission type, you understand the airspace, now you're going to seek approval. So you're going to zoom into the map, and then now you're going to see more details about specific numbers and what is this? So these numbers specifically mean if you want to fly, if you want to receive approval automatically within seconds in the app, you'll have to submit a flight plan that is at or under the number that is listed here. And I'll go ahead and walk through that. So we've understood where we want to fly. We're going to fly in this particular area around the Rancho Park Golf Course. So I'm going to come here. I'm going to begin the process of submitting my flight plan. All right. Now that we've done that, we have a few options. It can, depending on your flight path, it can be a path. It can be a box shape. It's dependent on your mission type. Either way, what's going to happen is the advisories are going to come back specific to the boundaries of your flight plan. So in this flight plan that I've drawn here, it intersects Santa Monica class Delta airspace, and authorization is available at or below 200 feet. So, okay, so far, so good. Now we just need to enter some specific details about our flight plan. How high are we going to fly? We're going to be flying at the maximum number listed here, 200 feet. When is the date and time? We'll go ahead and place it for today. Duration of the flight, it's going to be about an hour and a half. Pilot and aircraft details. So you will need to enter details about your contact information, your first name, last name, email address, and phone number. this is how you're going to receive your LANC authorization number, is through your phone number. So you'll need to enter that, and then you'll need to enter your drone details. And now the flight contacts component is specific to the mission type that you've selected, and that's Part 107 commercial or recreational. So you'll see that if you select the recreational rules, it's going to be a much shorter requirement. It's only going to ask maybe 2 or 3 questions, whereas commercial Part 107, you have to make sure that you're following more of these rules. So is the drone registered? Do you have a Part 107 certification? Is the drone equipped with anti-collision lighting? Have you performed a pre-flight checklist? And is it occurring within visual line of sight? So once you've confirmed that you are adhering to those specific rules under commercial Part 107, that's about it. So you re-enter some details about your pilot information, phone number. Now the safety brief note field, we got questions about this as well, so I want to take a second to talk about this. You want to enter specific details on the ground. This communicates to the FAA that you, as the pilot in command, have taken all the necessary steps to ensure that the operation is performed safely on the ground. So for example, you want to enter, I have 2 visual observers. I am not flying over people. I am not flying near any sort of buildings. I have multiple emergency landing zones. I have safety equipment. That way the FAA can ensure that the flight that you're submitting, you've taken all the necessary safety steps to conduct a safe operation. Now, just a few more questions. The maximum flight speed, it can't be over 100 miles an hour. Expected visibility has to be above 3 miles, and weight of the drone can't be over 55. So that's it. Once you enter the details about that flight plan, this was rejected for some reason. Let me just try one more time. Shouldn't be doing that. Okay, 1 second. So what we're looking for is, a green status bar that says once, you're following the rules, and once you apply for authorization, you're going to receive a notification saying that you've been approved. There is some weather information on the ground based on the weather data sources that we receive. Once you review that, you review the authorization requests, that's it. Now, once you submit your flight plan, that's it. You're done in terms of the authorization component. Now, you will receive a text notification. I just received one. You can't really see it here, but I received one on my phone with a LANC authorization number that says you're approved to fly. Now, this is huge because before AirMap provided this LANC capability, it could take up to 90 days through a paperwork process to submit to the FAA to get this kind of approval. So LANC has been available for about 2.5 years now. And, coming from the history of not having this is huge for commercial operators and for recreational operators, because now you can start flying right away in your backyard for fun or for work nationwide. So that's huge. And I really recommend that you utilize this LANC system in order to do that. Now, you can also do that for recreational rules as well. And it's very, very similar. It's the exact same process, but instead you select recreational rules. Now, I'm going to showcase one more type of LANC authorization because we do get a lot of questions about this as well. And, a lot of people sometimes are kind of not sure how to proceed. So you'll see that as you get closer to an airport, the flight altitudes start reducing, and that's kind of understandable, right? The closer you get to an airport, the lower the altitude you'll be able to fly, maybe not even at all, depending on the safety requirements. So we got a lot of questions because, hey, I need to fly in this particular area that's listed as a 0-foot zone. What does that mean? Does that mean I cannot fly? You can fly, but it is a bit of a different process. Now, what I mean by that, by a different process, you as the drone operator go through the same submission. So we'll go through one more LANC authorization here, and this is going to be called manual authorization. So we're flying in a grid that's listed as 0 feet AGL, and we're going to enter some details again. We're going to be doing this under a commercial operation. We're going to enter some details here about the altitude. Even 100 feet, it's not very high, but it's higher than what's being listed here. Now, you need to submit this about 3 days in advance. The reason for that is because it's in a 0-foot AGL zone. The FAA actually needs to review this flight plan before it can be approved. So just kind of keep that in mind, because this particular method is not automated because you're flying higher than what's being listed. Enter some additional details with pilot aircraft information, the flight context information. We've reported that we are adhering to commercial operations, pilot information, right? So everything being the same. Now here's the difference. It's not automatically approved. And I'm emphasizing this because you're now flying higher than what's being listed in that facility grid. It was 0 feet, remember. And now what happens is if you submit it, it's going to require FAA review, and this can take up to 30 days for review. So you will need to be patient with the FAA if you need to fly higher than what's being permitted. But once you submit it, it's essentially going to return a message saying it's been submitted in the system, but it's going to take some time to be reviewed. Now, once it's reviewed, you'll also receive an SMS notification that it's been approved or been rejected for whatever reason. Now, keep in mind, if the FAA after 30 days isn't able to approve your flight plan, it is automatically rejected as well. So for example, let's say I submitted a flight plan for this Saturday, like I did. If they don't reply either 24 hours before the flight plan, or if you scheduled it out and they haven't replied within 30 days, it is automatically rejected because the FAA hasn't replied. Now that happens, but it's generally not super common. We've seen a general turnaround time of a couple days, maybe 3-4 days, but it does happen, and just know that that's how the system works. Now we do have a tutorial on everything that I've just described here. And that's from automated authorization in the application as well as manual authorization. So I will leave all these materials in the chat after the demonstration. Just keep it for yourself. And that is essentially everything you need to do on the regulatory side. And it's very powerful because, again, you can get automated authorization in a few seconds. Now, there's one more topic that I want to talk about that is outside the realm of regulation, but it's really important because a lot of people come to us with this issue. Now, for example, step one, you've gone through the process of applying for authorization and you've been approved, right? So now from a regulatory standpoint, you're safe. You're not going to get in trouble. You have an authorization number and you're adhering to the rules. Now, specific manufacturers have geofences in place. Now I'm talking specifically about just DJI just because they sell the most drones and they have this geofence function. So keep in mind that it's a two-step process. Number one, get authorization through the AirMap application. Once you've done that, you're going to need to check with DJI or your manufacturer if they have a specific geofence, and you're going to need to unlock your drone. Now, the reason for this is because right now the regulatory bodies are not talking to the manufacturers. So even though you received, the grand authority from the FAA to fly, DJI will not recognize this, or any manufacturer will not recognize this because Lance does not talk to the manufacturers yet. So I'll leave this page as well, but what you'll need to do is you're going to need to go to a self-unlocking page, and then you're going to need to, again, submit your flight plan with DJI and essentially tell DJI that, I am flying near an airport, but me as the pilot in command have taken the necessary steps to ensure my safety and the safety of everyone around me. You're going to need to unlock my drone. And in this page, you're going to see areas that you can unlock, right? So restricted zones are areas where you're going to need a custom unlock. Authorization zones, you can go on to this page. It's pretty quick. I've gone through it multiple times. All you need to do is just to input your serial number, your date of flight, submit it, and your drone is unlocked. Now that completes the puzzle and the two-step process. And at that point, if you've completed those two steps, then you're not going to run into any sort of issues. And that, for the most part, it's everything in a nutshell that you need as a drone operator to know how to fly recreationally and even commercially. But I'm open to help answer any sort of questions right now. Let's see here.
It looks like if we wanted to start with Jim, it looks like you have one at the top there.
You're asking, I think we want to maybe make clear the difference between controlled airspace, restricted airspace, and if there's, you're asking if there's a way to authorize night flying with the new remote ID.
Just a quick chime in, because I've done some real deep diving on the newest rules. You need to make sure that you've taken the latest training that will be coming out from the FAA, since the remote ID rules and the night operations and operations over people are going to be published in the Federal Register on the 15th. I think the rules that I've seen will actually go into effect 60 days, and the FAA is supposed to have that new training out within 45 days. So you'll be able to go online. If you look at the commercial ICUAS remote pilots group on Facebook, Kevin Morris he posted that information. And then he also put out a little bit of color on the fact that the night operations and that sort of testing and training will be available. So anybody who already has a 10729, all of those are going to be essentially null and void, I believe, within 60 days of the rule going active. So essentially, anyone who's taken the training through the FAA will be allowed to fly at night. So the authorization will essentially be on top of that. If you've taken the training, you're allowed to operate at night. And then if you have authorization, I'm not sure if the specific airports are going to be able to limit those requests if you're outside of, say, a Lance grid. But my understanding of the rule is that you're still going to be able to just get normal Lance authorization and fly at night, essentially as you would under a waiver if it were attached to that authorization already.
I'm impressed with your research skills, to whoever just spoke.
There was, sorry, Ramon, trying to go through the question. There was, okay, so can you explain the other colors on the grids with height limits? So do you mean, okay, so do you mean this orange bar, that kind of? No, I completely understand that, that confusion there. So, okay, so found one. So what you're seeing here between the different colors, now, if it's orange, it essentially means you can apply for Lance authorization. It means it's enabled as a listed airport, as an enabled facility. So I'll include the list of enabled facilities as well. Now, if you see red, then that means that that particular facility is not subscribed to the Lance system. So the process that I just kind of demonstrated will not be applicable because the facility isn't participating in Lance. So if it's red here, you'll need to go through the traditional process of applying to the FAA through the airspace authorization in the FAA drone portal, and then wait for the FAA's response. So it's not the best process if you see it that it's under red, because then that means that you know, no Lance provider will be able to provide automated authorization for the airports that are not listed. So again, I can include a list of the UAS facilities that are included, and it's visualized as, you know, yellow it is enabled and red it is not. Does that kind of help clarify it, Ramon?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
And I think Jim had another question as well.
Mm-hmm.
In there. Jim, did you have another question?
Yeah, just the one that I posted, and this one came up. Desi, you're aware of this. We have some things on the map that have changed, but they still show up in San Diego. Particular, we have 2 IPP areas. The IPP program ended in October. They still show up on the map. When you have things like that you come across, how do we say, hey, AirMap, take a look, or this is an error, or submit it for review?
Yeah, so I'm gonna go and I think I know what you're talking about. I think we worked on this last week. So what you're seeing here is AirMap's enabling of IPP through the technology that you saw here on the map, right? So if it is something that isn't necessarily clear right away, please email me. And then what we need to do is we need to review it to determine whether or not this is something that we need to continue displaying in the application in support of IPP2 or additional evolution of the IPP, or if it's something that we can remove, we'll go ahead and do that. If there's any sort of confusion in terms of authority, just kind of keep in mind that, you know, drone operators generally just need to follow the rules that are set forth by the FAA. So don't be too intimidated if you see a different area here that says kind of, you know, in support of SDIPP. Doesn't mean that you won't be able to fly. It's just another, you know, we're participating in the evolution of airspace awareness, and it's meant for testing. It's meant for the advancement of different technologies, and not necessarily another restriction for drone operating.
So that's marshall@airmap.com. And you can also email our general support email, which is support@airmap.com. And we review those regularly. And, you know, any updates that you see that may need to be made, we'll address them. So that's the best way to get in touch with us. Shoot us an email. Absolutely. He says, AirMap appears to let me fly there, and yet the park has banned drones for several years. I want to make sure I'm using it correctly.
So is the issue that the state park in question is not being visualized in the map?
Eric, do you?
Yes. Yeah, I was just on AirMap, and it allowed me to basically plan a flight in Anza-Borrego State Park, and yet Anza-Borrego State Park has vociferously banned drones for a number of years. That should be a banned space, I think, and yet I was able to plan a flight there.
Sure. So I do want to help kind of address the questions with state parks specifically. Now, state parks, their rules are different. It's different than, say, a national park. National park is one resource that essentially says it's one data source with the Department of Interior that says all drones are banned in the national park, and that resource, that API, is easily grabbed, right? And that's why you see the difference between national parks, you know, all visualized in red, but state parks are missing. The reason for that, each state park is different. Some state parks allow it, some state parks do not. So that is a data gap that we have in the AirMap app, and that's where crowdsourcing is really important. We collect all the information, local parks, city parks, state parks. We need that information, and that's collected from individuals like drone operators that notice this exact issue, right? Because there's not a single data source for state parks. So I made a note of Anza-Borrego State Park here, again, for our data engineers to review, and for us to, you know, review the boundaries. We need the necessary GIS information. It's a bit of a hunt for us to get this. So that's why I can take some time for Desert State Park. Ultimately, if you find that, if you know that there's a discrepancy, you know, with the state park and what you see in the AirMap app, as the pilot in command, then you know, you're going to need to take that information into account. If the state park is saying that you can't do it, then, you know, follow the rules as well. But it is something that we're working on. So I made a note of this. We're going to go ahead and review it, but I wanted to kind of explain at least why there's a difference between national parks and state park information.
Thank you both for the presentation also. That kind of wraps it up.